Watching Kyle's unboxing videos again?
Yeah, he always finds the coolest... No way! A robot dog? Gotta ask where he got it.
Or use your Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Just draw a circle around the dog on your screen, and it shows you where to buy it right in the app.
Whoa, I just learned a new trick. And that for once, I beat Kyle to the next big thing.
Circle it, find it with the new Galaxy S24 Ultra and circle the search with Google. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Internet connection required. Results may vary based on visuals.
Hey there, Duke fans, and welcome to episode 397 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. I am Jason Evans. We are here to talk about the big day, Saturday, Duke playing UNC, and as crazy as it sounds, folks, this has never happened. Duke versus UNC isn't the big story from the game. The big story, of course, is that Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K, will be, well, he's already sort of called it quits. It will be his final game in Cameron Indoor Stadium, and the whole world, the entire sporting world, the college basketball world, of course, will be focused on Cameron Indoor Stadium to bid farewell to some extent. Obviously, there's an ACC tournament and an NCAA tournament still to come, but to bid farewell to the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Like I said, I'm Jason. I am joined, as I almost always am, by my partners, Donald and Sam, on this podcast. Donald, how you feeling this morning as we prepare to tell folks about what to expect on Saturday?
I'm going to borrow a word from Jeff Capel from his press conference the other night. It's all surreal. All of this is surreal to me that we're at this moment. We've been talking about it for the better part of like 8-9 months now, but it's still surreal to be at this point.
Sam, how are you doing? I know you are unfortunately the one member of the podcast who's not going to be able to make it there on Saturday. I'm bummed for you.
It's it's okay. I'm going to be enjoying it on television, and it's going to be pretty weird. It feels like we've been waiting for this weekend for close to a year now, and thinking about what this last game is going to look like. I don't, I know we're going to get into the preview, but I don't think we expected that this game would, at least in before we get in there, that it feels like sort of a foregone conclusion that Duke is going to win. And I don't want the team to be feeling that way. Although, Jason, as I know we are going to discuss today, the ESPN cover story that came out yesterday about Coach K tells me that I get the feeling that the players will be ready for this game and that they're not going to take this moment lightly.
Oh boy. Yeah. And yes, we're going to get into that amazing story. I must have had 10 different people say to me, "Oh my God, you've got to read this story." At the same time as I was telling 10 to 20 other people, "Oh my God, you have to read this story." It's really a fascinating article. We'll be discussing that in just a little bit, but I want to start, guys. Sam, you kind of alluded to it. There is business to take care of, and that is a game against the North Carolina Tar Heels. Duke has now won the ACC title outright for the first time since 2006. Notre Dame lost yesterday. That means even if the unthinkable happens and Duke falls to Carolina on Saturday, the Blue Devils are still ACC regular season champs. Again, first outright ACC title since 2006. Jeff Goodman on Twitter pointed out that the last time Duke did this, Greg Paulus was a freshman on the team. I mean, wow, come on. That was a while ago. Mark Williams.
The last time this happened, Sam Klein was in high school.
There you go. There you go. Mark Williams, by the way, tweeted, his tweet just said 1 of 3, 1/3. The team has now accomplished 1 of 3 goals they had this year. They've won the ACC regular season title. I can bet you that the other 2 goals are an ACC tournament title and cutting down the nets in New Orleans for an NCAA tournament title. And every single one of those things seems entirely achievable for this club. But guys, let's get into the contest against UNC because we want to talk a little bit about the Tar Heels, and then we're going to get to all the festivities, all the other craziness surrounding this game. Carolina, since they lost to Duke, is 6-1. The only game they lost was that just crazy game against Pittsburgh. But it's worth noting That 6-1 record, we've talked a lot about the ACC is kind of weak. They've compiled that against what you would have to consider largely the bottom tier of the conference. They don't have any wins during that 6-1 stretch against Wake Forest, Miami, Notre Dame, Virginia. They did get a road win against Virginia Tech. Nothing to sneeze at. That's a good win. That shows that these Tar Heels are a good team. But it's not like they put up this 6-1 record against a bunch of world beaters. And this game really matters to UNC. They are firmly on the bubble. If you look at Bracket Matrix, which is a compilation of a whole bunch of different people projecting the NCAA tournament bracket, North Carolina is down there as an 11 seed. They're one of the last teams getting in the field. And in fact, some of the folks on Bracket Matrix right now think UNC is not in the field. A loss to Duke, though forgivable, most assuredly forgivable from the standpoint of, what would be expected from Carolina. A loss could still knock Carolina down a couple of spots on the seeding line. And they are at a point where if you get knocked down a couple of spots, you might get knocked out of the field. So Donald, let me come to you first. What are you expecting from Carolina? What have you seen from Carolina lately? What do we need to be thinking about for this game that the Heels really need to win?
So to back up a little bit, like you mentioned, since we beat them earlier in February, they're 6-1. They're 22-8 overall, 14-5 in the ACC. And again, you mentioned that one loss being at home to Pitt by 9, which was kind of a shock. Again, one of the big shocks in the ACC this season. But they've been off since last Saturday, so they've had a chance to recover and rest. They had that overtime victory last Saturday against Syracuse at home, which was also another wild game. They've played a lot of those lately, Jason.
Hey, Donald,
a lot of these games.
Just really quick, they played Syracuse on Monday.
Oh, excuse me, Monday. Yes, the 28th.
But you're right, it's been a long break.
they've had a break. Yeah, I guess another day from us. But here's a couple of things that I need people to realize about UNC. Of course, the rebounding is always there. It's been there. We know we need to be physical and we need to be able to rebound. If we can hold them to 50-50 when it comes to rebounds, then I think we're having a good day, especially on the offensive end, because that's where they like to get a lot of their second chance opportunities and third chance opportunities. Since we beat them back in February, the one thing about UNC is that they've been turning the ball over a lot. Syracuse is the only game where they had fewer than 13 turnovers. Let me repeat that. That is the only game where they had fewer than 13 turnovers in a game. Here is what they've been doing since Duke: 14 turnovers, 16, 13, 15, 13, 16, and then again on Monday, 8. So they're not taking care of the basketball. And because of that,
and by the way, we've noted Syracuse is not a team that makes you turn the ball over. That's not their defensive game plan. So right. Yeah, even 8 against Syracuse isn't like a great number.
Right. And it's not like, they're forcing turnovers either. Most of these teams are in the, maybe low teens, but most of them are under 10 when it comes to the turnovers that are being forced by UNC. So yes, we need to take care of the basketball, take the ball away from them and use those opportunities. But here's the big thing, guys. Everyone's calling this game unprecedented, and there's a good reason for that. Our players, I think, are going to be ready, and I think they need to shine under the biggest stage that they'll ever be on in college. For all intents and purposes, this is the biggest game that they could ever experience. It's the most important game for every Duke fan right now. Until this whole season's done, we're going to look back at this game. And I think there's a tendency for someone in that big moment to kind of get nervous or just want to be so energized that they overthink things, or they, just have that bound of energy that they can't control. These guys need to embrace the moment, but they also need to remain within themselves. They got this far by being themselves. There's no need for them to be super saiyan or just, super versions of themselves against UNC. Be Duke. Play like Duke in front of Cameron, in front of these fans, all 208 of Coach K's former players that are coming back for this game. Let them embrace that moment and be the energy that they need. So for Duke, we need to be able to remain within control, take care of the basketball, rebound. If we can do that, Saturday is going to be a really, really awesome evening.
One thing about Carolina that you'll note, this was the case even when we played them a month ago. but particularly in recent weeks, the rotation has really, really slimmed for them. They're basically only playing 6 guys, and in a way, it's like 5.5. Like their starting 5, even more so than Duke, gets so much of the minutes. So it is going to be, a game of Duke's got a rotation of basically 7 players. Carolina's operating with basically 6. So not a lot of substitutions. As Donald pointed out, Carolina is a pretty good rebounding team. Again, I'm looking at their game against Virginia Tech, which is sort of their last big win. Syracuse is a good win, but is not sort of at the same caliber. Against Virginia Tech, they won the rebounding battle, if only slightly. And that's going to be a key for Duke. UNC, not a great offensive rebounding team. They're getting up one shot and getting back down the floor. So that's not the focus there. The focus is them taking away possessions from Duke. So if Duke can get a little bit of edge on the offensive rebounding end, be that from Mark Williams or Theo John or even Paulo Banchero and AJ Griffin, I think that's going to go a long way.
Yeah, Sam, offensive rebounding, like probably the thing that North Carolina does better than anything else on the floor is defensive rebounding. They are a great defensive rebounding team. And I actually think if you really look at like the stats and the way Carolina plays, the defense to me is sort of the most interesting thing about them, because they sell out to get those rebounds. Like I said, they're a great defensive rebounding team, but they don't do a good job of sort of stopping you from getting the shot you want. They don't block a ton of shots. They actually, one of the interesting things about them is teams don't shoot a lot of free throws against them, but that's not because Carolina's like playing great defense and not fouling. I think it's that Carolina doesn't do a lot to try and stop you, so they don't end up fouling you that much. They kind of let you get the shot you want. Like their 3-point field goal defense is not very good. Their 2-point field goal defense is really, frankly, not that good. And like Donald mentioned, they really don't get turnovers. We're talking about a team that is 346th in the country, literally one of the bottom 10, 12 teams in the country at getting opponents' turnovers. So this Carolina team I don't want to say they're not working on defense, but frankly, it feels like they're not really working that hard on defense, except to grab defensive rebounds. That's the one thing on defense that they are working to do. And
the one guy, Jason, who is important on that end is Armando Bacot. Obviously, yes. Duke fans are going to be familiar with Armando Bacot. He's been around for a little bit and is, along with Caleb Love and Brady Manick, kind of the biggest guys on the team in terms of output. Armando Bacot's the one who's pulling down the most rebounds. And if you remember from the first game against Carolina, Bacot got into foul trouble in the first half, which really limited UNC and gave Duke the opportunity to stretch the lead a little bit with Bacot on the bench.
And also on that side, Brady Manick also went off during that game, especially from beyond the arc. So whoever's on him will probably have to put a body on him and make it where those can be momentum swings, and you want to make sure you limit those in this type of game.
Duke's defense, I think, in recent weeks has gotten a lot better at closing out on guys on the perimeter. And so I'm curious to see if UNC is able to feed Brady Manick as much as they were in that first game. I think that where UNC has suffered UNC has suffered I can't believe I can't say injuries. It's injuries, not industries. They've suffered injuries that have limited their bench. They've won most of their games since they played Duke, but I think that this Duke team has gotten a lot better since that win at Carolina. They suffered only the one loss against Virginia, which was right after the emotional UNC win. And I think that Duke is in a much better place than they were in the first game.
Look, really quick to get into sort of the matchup specifically between Duke and Carolina. Sam, you mentioned this Carolina team likes to take a lot of threes. Duke is, and you said Duke is good at defending the three. I mean, Duke's one of the top 20 teams in the country at defending the 3-point line, and UNC's offense, the matchup, the Duke versus UNC offensive matchup, I think very much is going to come down to how much Duke is able to control Carolina from the perimeter. As much as Bacot is really good at operating inside, I think most of their offensive production is Caleb Love, RJ Davis, and Brady Manick, either taking 3-pointers, especially in the case of Brady Manick, or creating offense, off the dribble for Caleb Love and RJ Davis. And those are things that I feel like Duke is really good at stopping teams from succeeding at. And then on the other side of the ball, I don't know who Brady Manick covers in this game. I don't feel, especially the way Paolo Banchero has played the last week. If we get a Paolo Banchero that we saw against Syracuse and the Paolo Banchero that we saw against Pittsburgh, Brady Manick can't cover that player. That's just period, end of story. I imagine they will try Leaky Black on him. Leaky Black, the only thing he really does for UNC is play great defense. And
that's what they did last time.
Yeah. And I think that's probably what UNC does. But is Brady Manick, is he guarding AJ Griffin in that case? I just don't know. I don't know what Brady
that
Manick
happened last time too.
And that did not work out well. That did not work out well for UNC. So I think Carolina has some real major matchup problems on the defensive side of the floor.
Also on the offensive side, this is something that I haven't really talked about this season, but it's going to remain pertinent for this game. The one thing that's constant about basketball is that the court is the same size in any gym that you go to, 94 feet long, 50 feet wide, right? But in Cameron, it always feels a little smaller. And because of that, teams, when they come into Cameron, play a little bit more compact, because instead of being a big arena and everyone kind of being spread out and the fans kind of being a little bit further from the court, and you have the court side seats and everything, everyone's right on top of you. The person at the very top of Cameron is closer to you than some people are in like row 10 of other arenas. And because of that, teams have a tendency to kind of pack in their offense because they don't feel like they have the space to move around. And that's where Duke really can lock down people. Watch for UNC to try and start out by trying to spread the ball out a little bit and trying to spread the floor and trying to get their bearings a little bit. Whereas Duke won't have to do that because, of course, we play Cameron all the time. So that is going to be an interesting thing. If UNC tries to spread the floor out and they feel like they can't, it's really going to hamper their game because, again, when you try and pack everything in the really, small box that is Cameron Indoor Stadium with 9,314 people, and it's probably going to feel like 11,000 is going to be in there packed into that gym on Saturday, they're going to have a tendency to try and squeeze everything in. And when they do that, it's going to be much easier to guard them because they won't feel like they have the tendency to move. They can't move the ball around, and that's when mistakes happen for UNC. That's when their turnovers come, and Duke is going to be able to capitalize.
Hey guys, let me ask you all a question. Do you think it is more likely that the Duke players, the Duke team is going to be geeked up? You're geeked up for a Carolina game anyway, but this one goes to 11, so to speak. This one may go to 15, in fact. Do you think that Duke will be so wound up that they will come out like, on fire and just, almost run Carolina out of the building in the first 5 minutes? Or is there, much of a chance that Duke comes out so excited, so to speak, that we're not able to do the right things, that sometimes you get too excited for a game? Where do you think? Because I have trouble thinking that it sort of falls in the middle. I kind of think I'm gonna say, in my opinion, either Duke's gonna have like an 8 or 10 point lead in the first 5 minutes, or we're gonna find ourselves down like 6 or 8 points in the first 5 minutes. I'm not saying that's how the whole game's gonna go, but I think either we're gonna come out like super on fire or so wound up that we can't play right.
Make no mistake, I don't care what Duke UNC game this is, and this is obviously one that's a little bit different than the rest. All of them feel like they start out tight. Even if games are going 15-13 by the first TV timeout, Duke UNC games are always tight because it's one team trying to feel out the other and see where the weaknesses are, testing all the walls, so to speak, if you're a Raptor, to see where the weaknesses are in the defense. That is, I don't expect this to be anything other than a game where everyone's so wound up that they're going to come out tight. Now, tight doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be we're struggling. We can still feel like the game is a tight game and everyone's kind of playing a little, like constricted, and still have a wide open scoring game. But I do think it will be tight because, again, no one wants to make the first mistake. It's just it's chess here. This is just a chess game, and no one wants to make the first mistake.
I think that Duke is going to take all the momentum from recent wins where they've gotten out to a big lead and just use that as inspiration. I think that this is going to be a game where Duke is out front. Like Jason, it's the first scenario. Duke's going to be out front by 10, 12 points within 5-6 minutes of this game. I think that the crowd and the hype and the story and everything is going to be fuel for all of this. And the Cameron crazies and the rest of the Cameron crowd are not going to let Duke be down early against a Carolina team that, let's face it, is going to be overwhelmed, not just by Duke's talent, but by the moment.
I feel like the last time that we had a comfortable, a really, really comfortable wire to wire win at Cameron in the Duke UNC game was probably 2010, and 2010 ended okay. So that's cool. I can hang with that.
By the way, I do want to note that even though Duke has wrapped up the ACC regular season title, and that's a great thing, this is a super important game for Duke in terms of NCAA seeding. It appears that Duke is, right on that line between being a number 1 and a number 2 seed. And I feel like any loss at this point probably makes it impossible or close to impossible for us to get a 1 seed. And look, I'm not going to lie, that a 3 seed is still a possibility if bad things happen for this Duke team. Donald, while I'm discussing seeding really quickly, there's something important to note about the NCAA tournament that we just found out about Duke yesterday. Tell folks about that.
Yeah, so I want to preface this because it was a story that generated from a non-story. So what happens is, for the NCAA tournament, the NCAA asks every single team, if they were the overall number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, what would be their preference in their road to the Final Four? They can pick, obviously, we want to start here and then go to this region and then go to New Orleans. So for Duke, they asked Duke what that preference would be. And most people would say that, your preference would be to stay close to home. And that's generally the case for most teams. So that would be for Duke, as we talked about in previous episodes, starting in Greenville, South Carolina for the first and second round, then moving to Philadelphia for the East Regional, and then to New Orleans. But Duke submitted a preference that they would prefer to go to Chicago and be in the Midwest region for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 rather than Philadelphia. Now, there's a couple of reasons behind this. Jason talked about one earlier this week when he mentioned that Philadelphia obviously has Villanova, and Villanova is possible that Villanova could end up in that region and basically playing at home, which a lot of people don't want to have. But then there's also Chicago, the fact that this is Coach K's last ride. And we'll talk about this article that came out on ESPN in just a little bit, but it talks about, the fact that Coach K really enjoys the fact that he's from Chicago. He always enjoys going back, and this would be one last time for him to play at home in his real home of Chicago, Illinois. So I think that is what's going on. But the reason why I say it's a non-story is that they only posted that, and everyone has taken that to say that, Duke is getting to call where they're going to be in the NCAA tournament. That is not the case. Only the number 1 overall seed gets this preference. After that, the other 67 teams in the tournament, their preferences get thrown in the trash, and it's just based on where they are.
I don't think that's the case. The number 1 overall.
That is the case. That was clear. It was clarified by the NCAA last night that only the overall number 1 seed gets the preference of where they want to go. After it is based on location.
The distinction here is that teams could submit where they would like to go, if no matter what. But then once the rest of the seating goes into place, it's just based on distance from the campus. So that
correct.
I believe the way this is still working is that the rest of the 1 seeds, just the number 2 team gets sent to the nearest destination that is not wherever the number 1 seed went, and then the number 3 team goes to the nearest destination that's the places that have already been filled and on down the line. So there is still there's a benefit to being the top whatever seed number you are. So in a way, it's like it can be better to be the top number 3 seed than to be the last number 2 seed, because the last number 2 seed, if all the teams are on the East Coast, has to go out west or something like that.
Right. And here's the deal, all right? Because again, this could work out in a number of different ways. But what I'm saying is the preference only becomes a factor if the overall number 1 seed requests it, right? Because here's the deal. we are competing. If we want to go to Chicago, for example, we are competing probably Kentucky, maybe Kansas for that number 1 seed that would go, because again, those 2 teams are deemed to be closer and they would prefer to go to Chicago rather than Philadelphia. So Duke would have to be higher, or at least actually they'd have to make sure that they are lower on the scale than Duke is, because Duke would get the preference first. But really what it comes down to is Gonzaga, as of right now, is the overall number 1 seed. All of these preferences that were submitted, the only one that is being taken into account right now, as of right now, is Gonzaga, because they are the overall number 1 seed. After that, it's based on location.
Then why was Duke? I mean, like, not to.
Why was this a story then?
Yeah, why was this a story at all?
Because it's Duke, and because it's Coach K, and people. And if you saw any of the comments to Seth Davis's tweet, because I believe he was one of the first to tweet out about it, or Wright Thompson, I'm sorry, was. But all the tweets are basically like, oh, of course, NCAA is pulling everything for Coach K, but they didn't clarify that everyone in Division I submitted a similar preference.
Yeah, Duke probably hasn't been in the running for the number 1 overall seed since they lost to Virginia.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
and that's why I said this is a non-story that became a story.
Well, okay, there you have it. So glad we spent 5 minutes on that.
Having said that, I think that'd be great if we end up going to Chicago. I'm just going to put that out into the.
But probably as a number 2 seed.
Probably as a number 2 seed. Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, so we're going to take a quick break, folks. When we come back, there's a lot going on Saturday, and we need to talk about all of it, and we need to talk about the article that has everybody buzzing, Wright Thompson's story, ESPN cover story that revealed so much about Coach K as we approach the end, the final game in Cameron. More on that coming up right after the break. Okay, we're back from the break, and we need to talk a little bit about just everything that's going to happen on Saturday. It's just going to be craziness. Jeff Goodman says that all 208 players that Coach K has coached, March 17th, 1980, that was the day Coach K was hired. On March 17th, 1980, Coach K started coaching Duke players. All 208 players that Coach K has coached have been invited back to Cameron to attend his final game. There's no word, by the way, on how many of them will be there, but I've heard lots of I've heard talk that like it's going to be 75 or 80 of the players are going to be coming back. And there are plenty of, by the way, current Dukies in the NBA who have a day off on Saturday, who could, potentially come in for the game. Jason Tatum, RJ and Cam, Grayson Allen, Seth Curry, those guys all have a day off on Saturday and in theory could come in for the game. Donald, let me start with you, because you and I are going to be there. The scene is just going to be bonkers.
Like I said earlier, there's 9,314 seats in Cameron, and it's probably going to basically be about 11,000 people in there. This is the ticket that everyone's going to say that they were there, and they're going to be like, "Yeah, I have a picture with Shane Battier," and that will be your reference for being at this game or being at Duke. I mean, because honestly, I feel like the scene outside is going to be just as wild, right? Like I've been to a Duke UNC game and not gotten in 2010, and the scene on campus is just amazing because everyone gravitates to Duke for this game in any normal year, but especially I think Saturday it will be the case as well. And it's going to be hard to kind of take it all in. Like Duke just released the schedule of events essentially of what's going to be taking place inside Cameron and outside in Kville / Schwartz Butters Plaza, or Morton Plaza, I think is what it's called now. But it's
give that to everyone so folks know. I mean, it starts at 10 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, we have game day at 10 a.m. Like ACC Network and ESPN are going to be doing Sports Center shots from Kville starting tonight as we record on Thursday. It's just a litany of things going on inside and outside. So, and I like this because it's for people that are going to the game. It's also for people to just come and enjoy being a part of this experience, even if they don't have a ticket. So it is hard to put in the words what it's going to be like. So I'm not going to do that. But I think it's just one of these things where it's one of the momentous occasions in the history of basketball. And I feel especially just honored that I'm going to even be a small part of that.
Yeah, Donald, to your point, there will be a lot of people that claim to be at this game that won't actually be there. I will not do that. There is probably going to be too much recorded evidence that I am definitely not in attendance for this event. But it's going to be nuts in there. I was at that game in 2010. I've been to a small handful of Duke UNC games in Cameron in my life, and it just feels different. I know we talk about this every year before this game, but there, even in a normal year, even in a year when Duke is just a prospective number 2 seed heading into the NCAA tournament, that this game generates all kinds of hype. And as we know from the fact that there's going to be wall-to-wall coverage all day on Saturday, that ESPN is basically sending the whole staff to Durham.
Yeah, the network's moving completely.
Exactly.
It's going to be crazy.
They're relocating everything. So I saw that they're doing an hour of post game from outside of Kville. I wonder if there's a bonfire. Are they going to just bring the show down to the bonfire on the West Campus quad? I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but that'd be pretty cool to see too.
We got a tip. We got a tip from a reader, from a listener that president number 44, my cousin down the street, Barack, is scheduled to be in the building. She told me to ask him not to go because last time he was there, a shoe broke, a famous shoe broke. But I rest assured everyone, I have gone down the street and I've talked to my neighbor and let him know that, there are expectations that we have at Duke University and that he needs to just, be himself and just kind of be cool when he's at this game.
There will be a lot of notable people in attendance who are used to being the center of attention, who won't at all be the center of it. It'll
none of them will.
It's sort of it'll be a great, it's like going to the Oscars. I imagine. I've never been to the Oscars, but I imagine when you go to the Oscars, you walk around and you're like, well, I'm famous, but everyone else around here is famous too. So it'll be easy to blend in on Saturday.
Oh yeah. We talk about all the Duke players that we expect and think may be there, but there are going to be tons of celebrities and such, and just, people who have known, famous people, important, influential people who have known Coach K or who love Duke basketball. I can't even, can you imagine what it must have been like to field the ticket requests and such for this game? I don't know how. I have no idea how they're going to be able to accommodate everyone. By the way, Coach K's, I'm sure his entire family, and he's got plenty of kids and grandkids and spouses, it's just going to be unbelievable. And in terms of ceremony, you're right. I think ESPN and ACC Network both plan to be at Cameron for the post game. There's going to be post game ceremony stuff. There's going to be pregame stuff. I believe the players specifically are going to have something that they do, or some of the players are going to have something they do before the game. They open the doors at 5:00 for a 6:00 game. If you don't get in there by 5:15, I think you're going to start missing stuff. I have every anticipation there's going to be just a ton going on, and then Coach K is going to address the crowd in the post game. That's already been announced. Wow,
Do we think that we're going to top the Kyle Singler designed 17-0 at home T-shirt that they rolled out in 2010? Because that was pretty fun.
Oh, they're going to have
that
was pretty cool.
I kid, it'll be much better than that.
I will say this: we're missing one thing that's normally the center of this game when it's the final game of the regular season. It's also senior night, so we're gonna have those as well. There's a lot that's gonna be compounded upon each other. And
Joey Baker has to make a speech in the middle of this.
He has to make a speech in front of all this, and they're gonna recognize him and just the senior managers and those.
I
guys.
actually feel bad. I feel bad.
I
for
feel
Joey
awful
Baker.
for Joey. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. It's one of those things where they're kind of like, oh, Joey, yes, great, clap. Now, Joey, get out the way, move. We're here for one reason. And I just want to say that because I want to recognize, Joey, we love you. You've been here for 4 years. You're an integral part of this team, and you're going to get your due on Saturday as well. I don't want that to be overshadowed by everything else that's going on.
All right, guys, let's move to it. I mean, we could just sit here and talk forever about, oh, wow, Saturday's going to be incredible. I think folks have gotten the point. And so I want to move on to a different topic very quickly, maybe not that quickly, and that is the ESPN cover story. There are a bunch of articles. Your news feed is probably being overflowed with fascinating stories about Coach K, reflecting on who he is and his career and the such. But Wright Thompson has written an ESPN cover story. If you have not read it yet, stop whatever you are doing right now and go read. And it's long, by the way. It's going to take you, set aside 15 or 20 minutes and then set aside another 5 minutes to go back and reread your favorite parts and also wipe your eyes, because there are moments that will bring a tear to your eye. This is a significant article that Wright Thompson clearly has been working on for a long time. Unlike some other stories we've seen about Coach K lately, Wright Thompson was given unbelievable access, not just to the man, but to people around him. In fact, as Donald mentioned, talking about Chicago, a huge chunk of this article is where Coach K comes from, his roots in Chicago, in the Polish community there. A ton is written about Coach K's best friend growing up and how they are still very connected to this day. And guys, I'm going to let you all talk about what you got from it a little bit, but first, host privilege. I'm going to go first, because as I was reading it, I was just sort of writing down things that I didn't know about Mike Krzyzewski that I learned as a result of reading this article. And I want to be clear, there are plenty of times I read stories about Duke and Coach K and I go, oh, I didn't know that about him. But this one to me just had so much that I wasn't aware of about him. Coach K loves Las Vegas. He loves to play video poker. He loves to play bocce, not necessarily in Vegas, not gambling, but just in general. Every season, when the season ends, the first thing Coach K does is he goes to Las Vegas and hangs out at the Wynn Casino there, and that he's good friends with the Wynns. I thought that was fascinating. The revelation that he and Jay Billis, that their relationship went bad for a little while because of the Grayson Allen tripping stuff and ESPN's coverage of it, and that Coach K blamed Jay Billis for the way ESPN covered Grayson Allen, I thought was fascinating. And that they've since made up, and they sat down, the two of them talked, and everything's now fine. The fact that Coach K puts the players in first, and that Coach K sits in coach when they ride on an airplane, I didn't know that. The fact that Coach K eats a ton of pizza. I mean, like, it made it
with
clear.
salt on it.
Yeah, right. And he puts salt as, I don't get that, by the
Until
way.
his doctor said he couldn't do that
pizza,
anymore.
On the pizza front, Jason, the other
Yeah.
pizza detail is that apparently the assistant coaches and Coach K all eat pizza late night after the home games. I want to know where they're getting pizza from, because I spent a few years living in Durham recently, and late night pizza is pretty much limited to Domino's and Papa John's, at least since now I'm trying to remember. There was another pizza joint that was on 9th Street that closed a couple years ago.
Devil's Pizzeria. Yeah.
No. Devil's Pizzeria is terrible.
It is terrible.
That place is the worst. The other place that was by Mad Hatter's, Donald, you're going to remember this, and maybe Jason will too, because it's by the FedEx. But there was another pizza joint that was by where the Mad Hatter's is, like in the shopping center.
Oh, I know you're talking like
Whole Foods.
it's like the Whole Foods.
I don't know the name of it.
It started with a C, but there were like all of that to say there weren't many pizza places open late night. So where is Coach K getting pizza from late night? And is he eating just like a ton of Domino's? And if
682-30-30.
If so, Coach K and I have so much more in common than I realized.
All right, wait.
The late night special is a late night special.
I'm still doing my stuff. The last stuff that I found from the article that I did not know. I first of all, I did know that Coach K, works like an insane person, like Sam said. But I didn't know that he was watching film until they said routinely until like 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And the article made it clear that if you want to know why Coach K is retiring, he almost kills himself during the season. That, there's a whole section where Mickey talks about the fact that, it's February, Mike's going to look terrible, that he looks awful by the time we get to this point in the season from working so hard, from stressing so much. It's time for Coach K to retire and get some rest. And then the last thing, all right, that Coach K, after the second Virginia game just a few weeks ago, that Coach K said this this current Duke team has it, and that Coach K, that was the moment that he realized these guys can take me to a sixth national title. Not saying that Coach K thinks they will, but the article made it clear that Coach K has just in the past few weeks recognized that the team has come together in a way that not every team does, and that they have a chance to reach the promised land. Again, that's tons of stuff from that article. Those are the things that I saw that I was like, just every single one of them was sort of a wow, I did not know that kind of thing.
The stuff that stood out to me most was the Bob Knight details. And I know that some of that has come out in other articles recently and productions about Coach K. But the Bob Knight stuff is so fascinating because we know that Coach K and Bob Knight have had this very challenging relationship for the last few decades, because Knight has alternatively like treated him like a son, but then sort of ignored him or been overtly rude to him. My takeaway from that is how much Coach K has reflected on that and allowed or not allowed himself to sort of succumb to all the demons that Bob Knight did, because here at his last game, it's not like he's being, unceremoniously let go. It's not like former players are turning on him, at least not in mass. I'm sure that there are some former players that don't like Coach K. No one is universally loved, but we're talking about, there being 200 former players in the program, and that close to half of them will be in attendance on Saturday night. That Coach K has really managed to keep the brotherhood, so to say. I don't need to co-opt their branding of it, but that he's managed to keep this whole thing together, and has managed to keep the hurt feelings to a minimum. It really speaks to just sort of how well he's developed the culture around Duke basketball.
Well, it's family. I mean, like that, the thing that comes through in the article is Coach K's unabiding. For Coach K, family doesn't mean only blood. It means, the people that you are truly close to, that you trust, and who trust you, and who you deeply care about. And I mean, God, the article makes it abundantly clear that Coach K's extended family, that includes, the folks he grew up with in Chicago, and certainly, most assuredly, includes his players. I mean, God, there are just so many moments in that article that talk about how much he cares about those players. That's the most important thing in his life. And it's beautiful to read about.
So for me, there's a couple of things that we already know from this article. I did know about the fact that he puts the players in first class, and that the coaches sit in economy, whatever flights they're taking. So I did know that. Jason, you gloss over the fact that he mentioned the samurai, the saber story that has been done right here on this
told
podcast.
On our podcast. Yes.
So we already knew that too. So like, if you've been listening to this podcast for years, you would have already known that story. But I think there's a couple things, honestly, that really stand out. The family part, I think, is incredible. And you talked about the Chicago roots of it. You talked about just his nuclear family, with the love he has for Mickey and the love that Mickey has for him. If you've ever met the two, you already knew that is abundantly clear from the moment you meet them. They are never, like, if they're within arm's length of each other, you could tell the love is there in a way that very few couples ever have shown publicly. But his love for his guys, he calls them my guys, right? It even extends to the fact that we talked about this earlier in the season when he fell sick during the game right after the Amaker stuff came out. We now know that in part it was because he felt so sick to his stomach that he could have potentially harmed his relationship with Amaker over that story, and that they called each other to like set the air clear and things like that. He will go to bat for his guys. The Grayson Allen stuff with Jay Billis and just his guy versus his guy, and he's going with his current guy. Like, those sort of battles that he had to do, I think, is fascinating, because a lot of coaches don't have those. A lot of coaches don't talk to the walk-ons that played for your team for 3 games and then graduated, and they barely recorded stats. He does. He keeps in touch with all these guys, and he keeps his brotherhood together. And I think that is an incredible feat, and it shows why so many people are trying to come back for this game. And lastly, I'll just say the breadth of this article. But I mean, yes, there's stuff that we knew, there's stuff that we did know, but just the in-depth detail that Wright Thompson went to get this information and just to tell this tale of Coach K's final season and the pain that he's had to go through, not just with him being sick or with him being hurt, but with all the losses that he's had to people near and dear to him, or just the struggles, the battles that his friends, family are going through. And he takes that all personally. He takes everything so personally, and he takes it out on the court and his passion of being a coach. So I think all of that was just absolutely incredible. It's quite honestly one of the best articles about a Duke basketball program that I've ever read. And it's about one man, but it really encompasses a lot of why this program has become what it is under Coach K.
All right, we're about to go. We've been talking, and I think this is not the last time that we will wax poetic about Coach K and the enormity of the moment that is approaching, very, very fast approaching. But before we go, there is something that I if you'd said to me a week and a half ago, Coach K is going to win ACC Coach of the Year, I would have said, what are you talking about? That the ACC media just, they always, year after year after year, refuse to recognize that Coach K has produced one of the best programs in the league every single year. It's like it's expected. And so Coach K never wins ACC Coach of the Year. And yet I definitely get a sense, there's just more and more talk about it, that this season, in his final season, they are going to award him a prize that he probably should have won a dozen previous seasons, but hasn't won in a very, very, very long time. Donald, I know you want to talk more about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about it, the greatest coach of all time has won 5 ACC Coaches of the Year, and he's won 3 national Naismith College Coaches of the Year. The last time he won national,
by the way, 0 AP Coaches of the Year, which is absurd. Right. There's talk, as you heard in the broadcast the other day, there's talk that the AP is going to rename their Coach of the Year award the Coach K Coach of the Year award, and he never won Coach of the Year from the AP.
He never won it.
They should be ashamed.
I do think the ACC should do that because he's won 5. But guys, the last time he won Coach of the Year was back in 2000. The last time he won Naismith College Coach of the Year was 1999. And that was because that team is one of Jason's favorite teams in the world, and for good reason. But for this year, there's a couple of things behind this, right? You don't want it to be viewed as a parting gift, because that's how a lot of people, the haters, are gonna view this. If he gets Coach of the Year, it's gonna be because they just wanted to give it to him on his way out. He didn't really earn it. But here's the deal: in a season that Duke was slated to be one of the top teams in the country, they've not only done just that, and they've been number 1 in the conference, but they also have literally carried the conference all season as the lone ranked team. I don't think another coach should get the benefit of saying they exceeded expectations, which is what this award has really become, when they couldn't even be ranked this season. So everyone, I mean, the ACC had 3 or 4 teams in the preseason top 25, and only one of them has stayed in the top 25 all season, and that's Duke. So I think there is some merit behind the fact that, yes, Coach K has done the best job of any coach in the ACC, because, again, he has carried the torch of the ACC. This team has carried the torch of the ACC all season long. And it's because of Duke that we're talking about 4 or 5 teams getting into the NCAA tournament from the conference. So I say give it to him, but I say that he's earned it, not that it's a parting gift.
These Coach of the Year awards, for some reason, don't take into account how much of being a coach is being a recruiter. And Coach K doesn't get the credit probably that he deserves for being able to pull that off year after year after year. And this year, especially, whereas, as Donald said, basically there's only been one reliably good team in the conference this season, and that's Duke. Duke might win this conference by multiple games in the loss column at the end of the season. So it regardless of the fact that he's retiring, only one coach has done a great job this year in the conference. I think, like, some of them have had, maybe Steve Forbes has brought Wake Forest back to the cusp of being an interesting, if not really, really good national program. So what? It's Coach K.
Well, and the other thing that I would add, like, people forget, oh yeah, Duke wasn't that good last year. Frankly, we just weren't. We didn't make the NCAA tournament, and we probably didn't deserve to make the NCAA tournament. And there was a lot of turnover from last year to this year. If you said to me, "Oh, you're going to take a team that was middle of the ACC pack last season, and they're going to have a lot of turnover, and then they're going to come out and be consistently the best team in the conference this year, and win the conference potentially by 2 games," does that sound like a good coaching job? Yeah. Hello. Of course, that's a good coaching job. And then the other thing I wanted to add is Duke came within 1 point in an overtime game of being unbeaten on the road in the ACC this year. I know the conference is down, but that ain't easy to do. Duke is within 9 points of being undefeated on the season against a pretty tough schedule.
The toughest schedule in the ACC was Duke's this year, and we were running away with it.
Yeah. These are not easy things to accomplish. And blending in all these freshmen, it's simple to say, oh, he's got future lottery picks and first rounders and stuff like that. Of course, they're going to be good. Yeah. You know what? There are plenty of guys who are projected as future lottery picks who aren't that good in their first season. Talk to Penny Hardaway at Memphis. Penny Hardaway has 2 guys who are projected to be top 5, top 7 lottery picks on his team. And one of those guys isn't even playing all that much, and their team is struggling. They've had trouble working those guys in, mixing in the experienced guys with the young guys. Coach K does it every year with ease. Of course, he's the coach of the year. It shouldn't even be up for debate. In fact, we should be talking about this being not his first coach of the year in the ACC since it became the 2000s. Yeah. We should be talking about, oh, this is the 3rd or 4th one he's won this decade, because that's what it probably should be. But yes, I think it is far and away past time. And I agree with you. It is absolutely not a career, parting gift. It is well earned for the job he's done this season.
Yeah. And just to sum it up, right. It's become this thing where you have to be told that you're going to be terrible and then exceed expectations. Duke can never exceed expectations because everybody expects us every year to be undefeated and win the national championship. And at the same time, recognize that they cheer every single time that we lose. And because of that, we're a terrible team and we're the worst program ever. I think people need to get out of their minds that the coach of the year has to be a team or a coach that took their team to unparalleled expectations, because some of these expectations, quite frankly, for some of these teams are low. It's about a guessing game, and you're basically predicting the coach of the year based on a guessing game at the beginning of the season. How many times has the number 1 seed made it to the final and won it all, the number 1 overall seed? Not every year. How many times has the team that's been picked to finish number 1 in the ACC done it? I mean, Duke has been picked to finish first in the ACC. How many years this decade? Like 5 or 6? And this is our first one since 2006. So it's not always, you still have to coach the games and you still have to play the games and win the games. And Duke has been doing that for a long time under Coach K. This year is no exception. He should get this award.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to wrap it up there. We've been talking for a long time leading up to the big game on Saturday. The DBR podcast will be covering things every which way from Sunday. We're going to have a ton of podcasts coming at you. We're going to have a ton of content in the, in the wake of the, big game and big festivities. They're going to happen on Saturday. Donald and I will both be there with our iPhones out recording stuff. If you run into us, if you see us, come up and say hi, and maybe we'll record a little greeting or something like that. But that's going to wrap it up here for this episode of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. Again, I am Jason Evans. I want to thank Sam Klein and Donald Wine for joining me. I want to thank all of you for making this so much fun, for interacting with us. Please keep on sending us emails. Tell us what you like, what you don't like about the podcast. Ask us questions and stuff. Yeah, Donald.
And if you're going to be there on Saturday, if you're one of the lucky that are going to be at the game on Saturday, email us. We're going to try. I don't know how we're going to do it, Jason, but we'll figure out a way to shake hands with people. And once we get our tickets, we'll find out where we are, but we will be there. If you see us and you bump into us, definitely say hello. It's going to be a magical day, and I can't wait to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And by the way, that email address, like you don't know it at this point, but I'll say it anyway, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. Like and subscribe, all that other stuff. You don't need to hear it from me. We're going to roll. We will talk to you on Saturday or Sunday, I should say. Duke, let's go out there and send Coach K out the way he deserves, the way we all want to see it. One more victory over Carolina. Go Devils! DBR Podcast signing off. Here's the Duke band to play us out and take us home.
Go to hell, Carolina.
Go to hell. So, Sam, let me ask this. If Donald and I are both traveling on Sunday, you know, we'll record Sunday morning. Are you going to be cool? You can edit, right?
Yeah, on Sunday I'll be able to edit.
Yeah, and I'll probably have, not probably, I will almost certainly have some audio that I record from my iPhone from being there. Like, you know, there may be players that I run into in the hallways and stuff of Cameron that I, you know, whip out my phone and try and talk to for a minute. So there'll probably be some of that as well.
Yeah.
Good deal. Donald, what's that background?
Huh?
I see Justin Robinson.
Yes, this is from 2020. This was from my Duke meeting last night, but I will take it off because it usually fucks up with my video.
I was at that game.
I was at that game.
I was not at that game.
Really? You
There we
weren't?
go.
Wait a second.
This is the
last UNC game in Cameron?
I haven't been to a UNC game since I graduated, since senior year, which was the last game in Cameron for me. I tried in 2010, couldn't get in. So me and my best friend, we just watched in the Bryan Center at Armadillo Grill, RIP.
Oh man, you should have called me. I had an extra ticket.
I didn't know you at the time.
We didn't know each other then.
We didn't know each other then. In fact, Devil Evan, you hadn't even graduated yet.
Yeah, that was my junior year.
Yeah.
And I had a ticket upstairs for that game. My dad had come in for it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the last time I was in Cameron was the final game, Justin Robinson game, the final game of the I guess 2019-2020 season, literally days before COVID shut the world down.
Right.